welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we'll be talking about how to draw a fox using just the Lasso tool. So, as always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet and drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. Alright, so here's the fox. It's a couple different colors, one for the eyes, one for the face, and then of course white. You know, we all kind of have a good idea of what foxes look like. So I'm going to draw it with the Lasso tool here. Right, just the tool in the upper corner. It's just a select tool. And so I'm going to go ahead and select that. I am going to use my stylus for this because I'll be drawing. So our brains are rather remarkable at filling in information. And so what we're going to be doing in effect is creating somewhat of an abstract fox. And you only have to add certain information in certain places, right? So we need kind of down here, I'm going to create kind of these loops up. And allow that to go through and up. So very much like a variation on my style, just a little bit more abstracted. Same here. Create these loops going up. And then of course he's got the bottom lip down here. We could do that as one big fill. Actually going to go ahead and bring it down here. Now to do this, I'm holding shift, right? So as I select more things, I have to hold shift to make that happen. And then often what I'll do is I'll check it much like I do when I'm drawing and I take a layer off to see how the drawing is looking. I'll take the layer off to see how the selection is looking. And I want to make sure this comes all the way over. All right, and then we have, you know, white coming down even here, so we'll create, these are longer. I'm going to do kind of long loose strokes for the white coming down here. Doesn't have to be anything major, just enough to fill in the space so that we can see it and we're aware of it. Same over here. Right, it's long strokes. Kind of like what I do when I'm drawing, where I'm putting strokes in between other strokes. Right, I don't want a continuation, and I can lessen out how many there are. Okay, so we'll take off that drawing layer and see how it's going. Okay, and then there's white also in the ears, so some white fluffs in here. So we'll have some nice thick white fluffiness coming up. You can see I'm kind of making different angles, keeping in mind usually how the hair kind of comes off, and then as it rounds up the ear, it usually angles up. But angling in and then angling that up. And it doesn't have to stay within the confines of the rough sketch I have here. And then, you know, you're going to have some white here, so we'll create some of this effect as well, as the ear, inside of that ear is still doing its thing. Same over here. And we're going to go ahead and fill that with kind of that off-white color that I always do, right? So let's just edit, fill, foreground color, and then deselect it. So this is what we have so far. It's part one of the fox. Alright, so now we're going to get the nose. I'm going to come down in here. Again with that lasso tool. I'm going to draw the whole thing. So I'm going to swoop it to have a nice sort of ridge. And then come in here and continue these lines, following what I've already done, right? And of course, where the nostrils are. Because getting the basic shape is important. I'm going to fill that with the foreground color. And you see that looks good. Got to make sure, especially with this, since this is going to be a more solid color, that the gray is distinct from the white. And I'm going to add just one more so that it pushes down into, breaks that kind of plane, right? Because you had almost an upper and a lower, and I don't want that. Okay. So now we're going to come in here and do his face, lasso tool, same idea. Eyes are particularly important, so I'm going to come in here and make sure I get a good feel for the eyes. Nice thin line, both above and below. It's okay to be a little wobbly. Same thing on the other side. Just like with anything else, eyes are super important. And right, I'm doing this. My first stroke is always without the shift key, and then every additional stroke here is with the shift key pressed down because I'm adding to my selection. And then I'm going to come off of it here and make sure that this is clear, that it loops away from the eye. And then of course, you know, you have that section. It's kind of taken in here. All right. Now you have, it's by the nose. And then coming up. Of course, sometimes you can do it too thin. That's what happened here. Made that line a little too thin. Still kind of following the way that fur color would go. I did that there too. Got a little too thin. You don't have to have too many strokes. We're abstracting it after all. Right, over the eye there's always a bulge. So kind of indicating that with the fur in that direction. And then underneath it's usually going back down. So indicating that hump over and then back down. And just like these outward pieces, we can make these nice and long and fluffy. And just sort of bring it up. Same thing on this side, right? You have the eye, that's going to have a loop over it, a hump. pretty straightforward, right? You know, you just want, if you make them too thick, it can draw your eyes to it. That's why I'm making these all pretty thin, minus where I'm really extending them out where I can't quite help that as nicely. Still want them kind of overlapping with each other so that there's not like a distinctive line. That's important not to have that happen. And then as soon as I get this in, we're going to go ahead and fill this, and then we'll do the ears. Make sure that this looks okay, and we kind of have this right. Right, so as we come off, we're still going off to the side. And this comes straight up, kind of angles over. And then it goes off to the side. So it goes in toward the ear. All right. Foreground color. Oh yeah. It's looking very fox-like. Okay, so we're going to start another layer. And then we're going to do his ears. I keep selecting that. Still with the lasso tool. I know I keep selecting the brush tool. That's completely accidental. Right, first stroke in is going to be without the select key pressed down. So we're going to do some of these as we come up. And then go ahead and do one thin line here to indicate the ear. A few of these lines coming up and in. That should work. Yeah, you can kind of get the sense that's the ear coming in. So we'll do the same kind of thing over here. We'll have the line coming up and all the way over, and then up and back down, and then have some of these smaller lines coming up. And fill it with that foreground color. Take that off. It's looking very distinctly fox-like. Nice and abstracted. I might thin out some of these guys up here. Where they're starts a little almost too rigidly, right? Like there's a flat spot here, and I want that a little bit more narrow. Helps if I'm on the right layer. Also helps to thin it out. As I mentioned, right, if they're wider, it draws attention to it. Just fine. He's got the little edge fluffs. I think that looks a bit better. Alright, so eyes a little darker. Start a new layer. Select tool again. So first I'm actually going to come in here and surround the whole pupil. Iris. whatever that thing is in our eyes. And then we're going to do some erasing before we finish that out. Okay, so now we have to get the pupils in, so I'm going to hold Alt and we'll draw it in. I don't like that. There. And there. Now we're going to come in and widen this guy up just a smidge. And now we're going to take off the top as if the top of the eye is casting a shadow. So I'm going to hit Alt and I'm going to follow the line of right, this eye down. You can see. And do the same thing on this side. Trying to match kind of where they would end up. And then over here, same thing. Follow that line down. And then same thing on the other side. And then we're going to edit and we're going to fill that with the foreground color. Still a little much though, right? So we are going to come back in here and create kind of the jagged lines like we do to mimic the muscles in our eyes. So, you know, just kind of these, not too many. And erase that. That's one side. See, I'm making them different heights. And here's the other. Okay, now we do the same thing over here. Following the edge of how the pupil would connect in, right? So they all aim towards the pupil. There we go. Add some interest into that eye, to both eyes. And then we are going to add the light flare. We're going to use the elliptical marked key tool. So even though there's not highlights or shadows, still going to do it because it's still going to make a difference with the eyes. I'm going to edit, we're going to fill that. And then drag it over to the other side. Make sure we're in roughly the same spot. And there we go. We have an abstract fox. Although I'm going to put the white on top of the, is this the white? Yeah. There we go. The white on top of the red, so that these ear fluffs look more natural coming up over the red edge of that ear. Alright, so that is how you draw a fox using just the lasso tool in Photoshop. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me I have other videos of art tutorials I've done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.